We're going to look at the lever gun, the first successful lever gun really that started it all. The Henry, the 1860 Henry. Is that a thing of beauty or is it not? It's empty, as you might be able to tell. I loaded it on Sunday and it's kind of late in the week, so it's run out. But we're going to reload it here in a second and see how it does. This is the first successful lever gun, I guess you could say. Not the very first attempt at it, but the first one that was produced, sold, shot, and used even in the Civil War. And you recognize it, most of you probably. What a beauty. This is a Uberti reproduction, very accurate, reproduction of that thing. An original fire is a rimfire 44, and they sell for around 50,000. So I doubt that you're going to see too many of those in YouTube videos, people shooting them. We are going to actually fire this one. So to load it is very unusual. For a big old lever gun, you pull up this little tab, put that over, that opens up the tube. Now that looks pretty cool, but it does have some disadvantages. As we slide some cartridges in here, I'll talk about a little bit of that. You want to be careful not to have too much of an angle and have your rounds slamming against each other. That's not good. Even though these are flat nosed, that's not good because they're heavy, and you could have a mishap if you're slamming those rounds into each other. And also, when you release the tab, which I'll do in a second, you want to be careful about that and not let it slam into the rounds either. Okay, you pull that back over. Of course, it's not going to happen when it's full, but that's how you load it. And of course, you can see the rounds. Pretty cool. However, there's some disadvantages to that, right? Because you could get dirt in there, dust and fouling and everything, and you could mess up the works pretty easily. But this was the first real attempt at it. Let's take a couple of shots with it. All right. This is 45 long Colt, okay? We couldn't find any 44 Henry rimfire, or we would have bought some, maybe some bulk packs of it. And if you tell anybody I missed that 2-liter there, I will never forgive you. But that's what I just did. I don't know how that happened. Oh, stranger things have happened. All right. Pretty cool. Yeah. Oh man. Notice the tab is coming down as the rounds are being expended right into my hand. So I'm going to move my hand in front of it and take a couple more shots. Oh, there's a flower pot. There was a flower pot. Oh, there's a can. Woo! I'm not sure what that was. Whatever it was, it's not any longer. Oh, there's another pot. There's a cowboy. That's appropriate, isn't it? So you see that tab comes all the way down now. And like I was saying, you wouldn't want to reload it. Say you're just going to load 4 or 5 rounds or something. Let that thing fly, because look at that. That might not be good if you slam that into those rounds. Okay, so that's just something to be aware of in terms of safety with these firearms. As I was saying, you wouldn't want to. Okay, it's time to load it. You wouldn't want to do this. Put it on your. People have done it, I'm sure. Put it down on your foot, and drop rounds in. That would be the natural inclination. But not the best practice at all. Okay, it's just not what you would do. It's a lever gun, obviously, and it's pretty much traditional, isn't it? It looks like most of the lever guns that you've seen in terms of how the lever works. Cocks the firearm, you pull the trigger. When you lever it, brings another round up, puts it in the chamber and everything. Except the one big difference is this was one of the very first ones. And I've shared some of that with you, but the Volcanic Arms Company, which was in existence back in the 50s, mid-50s, was making well, actually, I think, yeah, got my little cheat sheet. The little pistol I've shown before called the Volcanic pistol, and you notice it looks similar to this in the action because it's kind of the great-grandfather, you could say, of the Henry. and that's a product of the Volcanic Arms Company. In fact, Smith & Wesson, Horace Smith and Daniel Wesson worked on that. They borrowed and bought some patents that dated back to what, 5, 6, 7 years earlier to Hunt and Jennings. So it's, you know, there's a lot there, a lot of history if you ever want to read about it. So there were some early attempts at a lever gun by Hunt and Jennings, and then when it got to the Volcanic Arms Company in the mid 1850s, you had Smith & Wesson working on it. They improved it, and they needed investors in the mid 1850s, and guess who became their chief investor? Top stockholder, a guy by the name of Oliver Winchester. You guessed it. And so he was a very key player there. And they were using a round in that gun that was like this. It was smaller caliber, but it was a hollowed out piece of lead with powder in it. And then I think they worked out a priming system for it too. But it just wasn't very powerful. It was a small caliber, 32, 25, something like that. And it just wasn't as reliable or effective, and so the company fell on bad times, really. And so Oliver Winchester more or less took it over. Smith & Wesson left to make revolvers and focus on that, I think. And Oliver Winchester became I think the president and basically the owner of that company, okay, Volcanic Arms. And then he changed the name in 1857 to New Haven Arms Company. That's when he hired a fellow by the name of Benjamin Tyler Henry as plant superintendent and put him to work on fixing this thing. And you know, they're working on new cartridges and everything, improving the action of the Volcanic. And he came up with this. Okay, that's kind of just the nutshell story there. But this is what he came up with by 1860. That's why this is called the 1860 Henry. And it fired this 44 rimfire cartridge. This is actually an original in a copper case. This is the real deal right here, and that's what it fired, the 44 Henry rimfire. They didn't, you know, get them produced, the machinery together, and to make them enough to get them on the market until 1862. The military, the North, bought I don't know, around 2,000 of them almost, I think. But from my reading, only about 1,000 of those actually got into service. And most of the ones used during the Civil War were purchased with, you know, private funds by the soldiers, and there were around 10,000 of them out there, and you know, used, especially on the northern side by the Federals. But it was a very desirable firearm to have, as you can imagine, because again, as I have pointed out before, 1860, 62. If you had a handgun in the you know, Civil War, you were carrying probably a cap and ball pistol, just like this 1860. This is an 1860 model Army, very, very popular. You loaded it as percussion. You know, it had all this business to go through to load it from the front and everything. It didn't use cartridges. There were later some conversions even to this cartridge, but that was later in the 1860s, later 60s. But so they were packing these. They were packing muzzle loaders. Most soldiers had a muzzle loader. So can you imagine how cool it would be to have this? Yeah. There we go. Little piggy. Try a turkey. Now the tab is right there in my hand. You can kind of grab it like that so that maybe it goes through your hand. When I get really ambitious and try that chicken. Not sure where I hit. Oh well, I'm not going to waste a lot of lead on him. Let's try a turkey here. Another. Boom. Let's try a cinder block right here close. Let's try a cinder block far away over there. Boom, went over. Actually, the sight feels pretty good. I think with just a little bit of shooting, I could pick off chickens without too much trouble. I don't see it really clearly. I should probably shoot with my other eye. But hopefully you can kind of appreciate, take yourself back into history and imagine what that was like to have a lever gun that would hold that many rounds, you know, 14, 15 rounds of 44 in a cartridge. You didn't have to worry about it raining on it, and it would still work. They were black powder, of course. That's all there was in the 1860s. But and of course, on top of everything else, is that not a gorgeous firearm? I have always admired them. They're just beautiful. They really are. Now, they have some disadvantages, but I mean, there is not a firearm that I'm aware of that really is better looking than that, if you want to just talk about the looks of it, of course. And of course, it's very functional. Just a gorgeous firearm.